Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privijacharya Stotra Satya Shishimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privijacharya Stotra Satya Shishimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gaura Bhakta Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandana Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitam Ritam Mahat. This Bhagavad Gita, the Gita Upanishad, the essence of all the Upanishads, is just like a cow. Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is famous as a cowherd boy, and Arjuna is just like a calf. And learned scholars and pure devotees are meant to drink the nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Hare Krishna. Once again, thanks everybody for attending. Continuing our study of Bhagavad Gita as it is, we're now starting the 8th chapter. And we'll do all together chapter 8, text 1, responsively. Arjuna Uvacha Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adi Bhutam Cha Kim Proktam Adi Daivam Kim Uchyate Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adi Bhutam Cha Kim Proktam Adi Daivam Kim Uchyate Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adi Bhutam Cha Kim Proktam Adi Daivam Kim Uchyate. Others can chant.
Arjuna Vacha
Arjuna Vacha
Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatmam
Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatmam
Kim Karma Purushottama
Karma Purushottama
Adi Bhutam Cha Kim Proktam
Adi Bhutam Cha Kim Proktam
Adi Daivam Kim Uchyate
Adi Daivam Kim Uchyate. Arjuna Vacha Kim Kim Karma Purushottama Adi Bhutam Cha Kim Proktam Adi Daivam Kim Uchyate. Arjuna Uvacha Kim tad Brahma kim adhyatmam. Kim karma purushottama. Adibhutam cha kim proktam. Adidaivam kimuchyate. Arjuna uvacha. Kim tad Brahma kim adhyatmam. Kim karma purushottama. Adibhutam cha kim proktam. Adidaivam kimuchyate. Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna said, Kim, what? Tat, that. Brahma, Brahman. Kim, what? Adhyatmam, the self. Kim, what? Karma, fruitive activities. Purusha Uttama, O Supreme Person. Adhibhutam, the material manifestation. Cha, and. Kim, what? Proktam, is called. Adidaivam, the demigods. Kim, what? Uchyate, is called. Translation. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with, what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to the body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, the Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority, able to give definitive answers. I'm also going to read the verse and just the translation of the next text, text 2. Adiyagya katam kotra dehismin madhusudana prayana kale cha katam gyeyosi niyatatmabhi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunivari Paschatya Deshatarine. Text 1 and 2 one more time. Arjuna uvacha kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama adibhutam cha kim proktam adidaivam kimuchyate adiyagya katam kotra dehismin madhusudana prayana kale cha katam gyeyosi niyatatmabhi. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Who is the Lord of sacrifice? And how does he live in the body? O Madhusudana, and how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So this is interesting. I find it interesting. Arjuna, at the very beginning of the chapter, is asking for definitions of these 7 things. Brahman, the spirit soul, fruitive activities, the material nature, the demigods, the Lord of sacrifice. How does the Lord of sacrifice exist within every living being? And what is the duty of a person at the time of death? Prayana kale chakatam gyeyosi niyatatmabi. What is the duty? What is the activities to be done by a person in knowledge at the time of death? Someone who is fixed in knowledge, fixed in consciousness. What do they do at the time of death? And Krishna, in response, those first 6 things, he just, super quickly glosses over them in 1 or maybe 2. Yeah, in 2 verses, he glosses over those first 6 items super quick. And I'll do that now, 30 seconds. Brahman is spirit. It could refer to the impersonal spirit, the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, the impersonal light, or it could refer to the nature of the living entity, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All are Brahman, all are spirit. Next is Adhyatma, the soul. That's the individual living being whose nature is also Brahman or spiritual. Karma, fruitive activities, all the material activities we do in this world. Adibhuta. Adibhuta means the material energy. These are technical Vedic terms and are used in different ways in different places. It could refer to the material energy or the process of material creation, or Krishna as the Lord of the material energy. Same thing with Adi Daiva. Daiva means the demigods. So it can refer to the Devatas or Krishna, who is the Lord and controller of all the Devatas. Adi Yagya. Yagya means sacrifice. So it could refer to the process of sacrifice, and also ultimately it refers to Krishna, the Lord of all sacrifice. How does the Adi Yagya live in the body? This is the super soul. Within us, we exist as soul, and Krishna is also there right next to us, right with us all the time as the super soul, the Paramatma. And what's the duty of a person at the time of death? To think of Krishna so that we can return to Krishna. So that's the whole thing. Krishna, the first 6, he does in those 2 verses very quickly, sort of almost like getting them out of the way. Okay, these are technical terms. Here's the definitions, and then he spends the whole rest of the chapter, how to remember Krishna at the time of death, what happens at the time of death, and how to return to Krishna at the time of death. So we could understand this is the important point of these 7 things that Arjuna is asking. But tonight, I'm not going to talk anymore about any of those things, because answers are easy. What's harder is questions. So Arjuna is asking these questions. What are these things? If we look at the end of the 7th chapter, Krishna mentions these things to Arjuna. And he says, you need to know Brahman, you need to know the soul, you need to know Adidaivam, Adibhutam, Adiyagyam. You need to know what to do at the time of death. And then in the beginning of this chapter, Arjuna's going like, I don't want to mock or anything, but Arjuna's like, whoa, you're throwing all these, big ideas and big words and throwing all this lingo at me. You have to explain to me what you're talking about. What is the meaning of all these things you're saying? What's the purpose of all these things? So this is what's going on. And I really love this. This is Bhagavad Gita. It's questions and answers between Arjuna and Krishna. That Arjuna is bewildered and in illusion about his duty. And finally, not finally, in the 2nd chapter, he decides, yes, I'm going to approach Krishna and inquire. And he's asking questions, and Krishna is giving answers. And it's not just one question. Over and over, he's questioning, what is this? What is this? What about this? What happens if I take up spiritual life but don't finish it in this life? What about this? So you say you instructed this to the sun god millions of years ago, but we're both the same age. How do we understand that? All these questions, one after another, questions from Arjuna. So the art of questioning is so important. Even if you have the greatest teacher, the greatest guru, the greatest master, but if you don't inquire, if you don't ask questions, if you don't ask the right questions, you won't be able to access that knowledge. So this is how important this is, to learn these things. Like a child, no one learns like a child. A child in 1 year or 2 years, a child learns a whole language in a couple of years. Doing that as an adult is really hard, but every child learns that, and they're always questioning, and it's almost like a joke. Like comedians, deal with this all the time. Oh, my kid is asking, what is this? What is this? Why is this? Why is this? Even Prabhupada once told a funny story about his own son. He said that he went to a wedding and he brought his little son. And the son was asking so many questions. What is this? What's the fire sacrifice? Who's that person? What's that person? Millions of questions. And Prabhupada was explaining, oh, this is a marriage, and the people are getting married. And then the son said to Prabhupada, oh, are you married too? So the child is like this. They don't know anything, so they ask questions, and therefore children are like sponges. They learn so much. And sometimes as adults, we become a little dull, or we become a little complacent, or we think we know it all. But if we keep that spirit of questioning up, we can also continue learning. And especially in spiritual life, we can continue learning and advancing. Like a child. Prabhupada, let's see, so many examples. One time, Prabhupada was talking with his disciples, and they were talking, I think it was some management issue about buying land. And Prabhupada said, you are all just like children. Even these were adults, more or less adults, in the early days of ISKCON. But he said, you're all like children. None of you is expert in anything. So this is not a bad thing, to remain like a child, to keep that inquisitive nature, that humble nature that I don't know, but I want to learn. Parikshit Maharaj inquired from Shukadev. Parikshit Maharaj was the most learned person. He was as qualified as Shukadev Goswami himself. And leaving aside the fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Arjuna is his devotee, but Arjuna was a highly qualified person. Qualifications, material and spiritual, we can't even imagine. But he took that humble position that I'm going to inquire from you. No one but you can remove my ignorance. Even though he was, Parikshit was advanced as Shukadev, in the Bhagavatam, Vidura approaches Maitreya and inquires from him. Vidura is arguably even more advanced than Maitreya, being a personal associate of Krishna and the Pandavas. But still, he humbly approached Maitreya and received so much beautiful instructions. The whole third canto of the Bhagavatam is these questions and instructions between Vidura and Maitreya. And all of I already mentioned Bhagavad Gita itself is questions and answers. And the whole Bhagavatam is questions and answers, starting in the very beginning. The sages are wondering, things are so bad, how are we going to help the world? So they ask these 6 questions of Sutta Goswami. And from those 6 questions, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken, which also contains within it so many other questions and answers going on. So humble students who want to learn and are asking intelligent and respectful questions, and a qualified speaker to impart knowledge. This is actually how we advance in Krishna consciousness, or in any consciousness, even in material life. This is how we advance. So the importance of this questioning. I'm reading this mainly, it's related, but mainly because it's just so beautiful. This is Prabhupada's purport in the first canto. And the verse is also glorifying good questions. Sutta Goswami says, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna, and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. So here's a section from Prabhupada's purport. The whole world is full of questions and answers. The birds, beasts, and men are all busy in the matter of perpetual questions and answers. In the morning, the birds in the nest become busy with questions and answers. And in the evening also, the same birds come back and again become busy with questions and answers. The human being, unless he is fast asleep at night, is busy with questions and answers. The businessmen in the market are busy with questions and answers. And so also the lawyers in the court and the students in the schools and colleges. The legislators in the parliament are also busy with questions and answers. And the politicians and the press representatives are all busy with questions and answers. Although they go on making such questions and answers for their whole lives, they are not at all satisfied. Satisfaction of the soul can only be obtained by questions and answers on the subject of Krishna. So if we want to understand Krishna, if we want to advance in spiritual life, advance in devotional service, we have to learn this art of how to ask useful and beneficial questions and answers. If we learn this art, then we can advance. And therefore, in devotional service, the quality of humility is so valued. Being humble is its own reward, just on its own. It's a beneficial quality, but it's also important. It's also a valuable quality because without humility, you cannot question. If you think you already know everything, you're not going to ask a question. I already know. I don't need to inquire from someone else. I'm full. I know this or I know that. I know Krishna. I am already knowing Krishna. I don't need to ask someone else about Krishna. So if we have that humility that actually I don't know about Krishna and I don't love Krishna and I don't know how to serve Krishna properly, so therefore let me inquire how to do that. That humility will let us undertake this process of questioning, which will allow us to advance nicely in devotional service. Because questioning means, in one sense, questioning means you're putting yourself under someone else. You're admitting, I don't have an answer, but hopefully you have an answer, so I'm submitting to you. So questioning is actually an item of submission. Therefore, going back to Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna is bewildered, what's the recommendation? Tadvidi pranipatena, pariprashnena sevaya. Prashna means question. I think also Hindi, Bengali, it's also question, probably in a lot of Indian languages. Prashna means question. Pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. That you need to approach a qualified person and inquire from him. Inquire from them how? Pariprashnena sevaya, with intelligent questioning, and sevaya. Sevaya means you don't just challenge someone, with a question. You're not trying to defeat them, but rather you're serving them, you're submitting to them. Sevaya means with service. Pariprashnena sevaya. So questioning the qualified person in a humble, submissive mood is vital. Humble, submissive mood does not mean that we give up our inquisitive nature. It doesn't mean we deny the doubts we have or the problems we have or the questions we have, but you submit them in a respectful way, ready to hear the answer. And what's the person you submitted to? Jnaninas tattvadarshina. You don't, if you have a question about plumbing, you don't ask a non-plumber, you ask a plumber. If you have a question about science, you ask the scientist. And if you have a question about spiritual life, you have to approach a person who is actually advanced or at least practicing in spiritual life and has some knowledge of spiritual life. This is how we go on in our devotional service. And this is how devotees associate with these questions and answers. There are 6 loving exchanges between devotees enumerated by Srila Rupa Goswami, and 2 of them are
Dadati pratigrinati guyam akiti prichati. The 6 items are giving gifts and receiving gifts. If you have a friend, if you have someone you love or have a friendly relationship, you want to offer them a gift. And they appreciate. And they offer you a gift, and you appreciate. And that makes the love and the friendship grow. And if you offer some food, you cook for your friend, you have a friend over for dinner, and they have you over for dinner, and this is how friendship grows. And also, guyam akiti prichati, that you have confidential exchanges with them. You speak confidentially. You may have some confidential thing, a personal problem, a personal issue. This is guyam. Guyam means secret or confidential. So you may have some problem, but if you have a friend who you know is knowledgeable and is your well-wisher and is actually willing to help you, then you're willing to reveal your mind to such a friend, and that friend can help you. Or you can help a friend who inquires from you. And guyam actually also means not just like a secret thing, like, oh, I'm having trouble with my marriage, or I'm having trouble with my work. But guyam ultimately means spiritual life and devotional service. This is the 8th chapter we're looking at today. In the 9th chapter, Krishna starts off saying, idam tute guyatamam. He says, now I'm going to teach you the most confidential knowledge. And Prabhupada explains that the earlier chapters of the Bhagavad Gita had confidential knowledge. You're not this body, you go through different lives, you reincarnate, so on and so on. Then more confidential, the practice of yoga and meditation. And now the most confidential is devotional service. So this is also guyam. Guyam akiti prichati means with your friends and with your authorities, you're discussing Krishna. You're discussing devotional service. This is the confidential talk. So we need to continue this, like I said, not become complacent. Sometimes, I know it certainly, happens to me. For me, it's a constant battle all the time. I've been around devotional service for a couple of years, and I think, oh yeah, I already know so much, I don't need to inquire. But how much do I really know? How much do I really understand? How much have I really internalized? How many ways am I falling short in my devotional service? And then when you consider that and realize that, then you can understand, yes, I need to approach someone who can help me to advance. Because if you stop questioning and if you stop questing, then you'll stagnate. So the questions need to be there, and the questions need to be proper questions. Relevant questions, intelligent questions, and respectful questions. Prabhupada says in the purport to that verse, he says both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. So blind following means I never ask any questions, I just do whatever is told like an automaton. And if you have a good guide, that's not the worst thing in the world, but better is to be intelligently engaged. And also absurd inquiries. We don't ask silly questions or useless questions or irrelevant questions. One time long ago in Boston, one devotee, some of you may know him, His Grace Naranjana Swami, very nice devotee, and he's a real mentor for me when I lived in Boston. He was giving class once, and at the end he asked for questions, and someone raised their hand and said, "Can you explain the meaning of vibhav?" Now, in his whole class, he had not mentioned vibhav, he had not discussed vibhav, and that's maybe a word that is worth explaining or understanding, but it was not applicable at the time. So the person said, "Can you explain vibhav?" And Maharaj said, "No." Any other questions? So that was a little sharp, but the point is there that the questions should be relevant. They should be meaningful in general, and they should be meaningful to us, something that will actually help us in our devotional service. And Prabhupada, this was something Prabhupada would sometimes deal with and sometimes comment on. Sometimes he would be actually disappointed at lack of questions or the quality of questions. Sometimes after a class he would say, oh, there were no good questions. One time he spoke in Boston, and afterwards he said, oh, they always ask the same old hackneyed questions. It was some impersonalist, some people who were into impersonalist yoga, and they asked something about it. And Prabhupada said, oh, they always ask the same hackneyed questions. So we don't want to be like that. Another time, one devotee, initiated disciple named Madhu Mangal, asked Prabhupada, what is the meaning of Madhu Mangal? And Prabhupada said, that is not a good question. He said, I discussed this at your initiation. This is not a good question. Or sometimes Prabhupada would receive a question and he could turn it around in a different way or in a fresh way, in a new way. One time, Steve, he was named Steve at the time, he went on to become initiated Satsarup, now His Holiness Satsarup Maharaj, but he was uninitiated at the time, very new to Krishna consciousness. So he asked a question, and it was kind of a mental, sort of psychological question. He said to Prabhupada, it seems like I could be many different people, like I could be one type of person with a friend, or another type of person with my parents, or another type of person with a mate. So I could be many type of people. So what person does Krishna want me to be? So a little mental. And Prabhupada thought a second and he said, this boy Steve is very nice. He does typing for me and sometimes he gives donation. All you boys should do like that. So at first, Satsarup Maharaj, he was a little bewildered. He said, well, he didn't really answer my question. But then he said, as he thought about it afterwards, he understood that Prabhupada actually did answer it in a way that your identity is based around your identity as a servitor of Krishna by serving Srila Prabhupada, and that's the identity that we cultivate, that we're the servant of Krishna, we're the servant of Krishna's devotee. So in an indirect way, Prabhupada was intelligently able to take maybe a less than sterling question, but turn it into a brilliant instruction. So at least if we try questioning, even we don't have the best questions, there's always hope of getting something beneficial out of it. Another instance, of course, in the early days, Prabhupada had to deal with many people who were, a lot of them were high, intoxicated, and some of them were mentally troubled in different ways. And sometimes people would just more or less speak nonsense. So this one time, this is an actual exchange. One man at 26 2nd Avenue, he said, I'll read a little bit of it, and you could see how, anyway, hopefully you'll see the point. The man said, practically, we tend to place emphasis on those we identify with the fact itself. Many people are meant to explain the why-fores and the wherefores of the metaphysical truth that I think, therefore I am. I have no answer to that question, rather, but that I attempt, I move, I live, I breathe. So, ability, tell me why, I have nothing to do with it. May I understand the why-fores and the wheres. So he went on like that for some time, speaking more or less nonsense from his troubled mind. And at the end of this long ramble, which Prabhupada let him do, he turned to another devotee and said to him, this is a general question you can answer for me. So he sort of put him off, but then he said, actually, no more questions, let's just do Kirtan. So sometimes Prabhupada would do that if the questions aren't there, then let's do Kirtan, because that will purify everything. Just like when Prabhupada went to France, I think it was, and he was speaking at a university there, and there were a lot of students who were part of the, socialist or communist movement in France, and they took objection to Prabhupada sitting on an elevated seat, and they started yelling and disrupting the meeting, and Prabhupada said, no more lecture, just do Kirtan. So everything is adjusted according to time and circumstance, but if a devotee is sincere and wants to advance, we need to have this spirit of inquiry, asking questions. And then those are bad questions or irrelevant questions, but then there are the good questions. Prabhupada would often give the example of Srila Sanatana Goswami, who approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he said, Ke ami, kena maya jare tapatroy, ihi nahi jani kemane hita hoy. That, who am I? I don't know my actual identity. Ke amai jare tapatroy. Why do I have to suffer the threefold miseries of life? Why am I suffering like this? Iha nahi jane kemane hita hoy. I don't even know what is actually best for me. Therefore, he asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you instruct me what is best for me. So this is an intelligent question. In the same way, some devotees came to Prabhupada. The devotees had just done a program at a grade school, speaking to very young children, like 10, 12 years old. And they came back and they told Prabhupada about the meeting. And one of the devotees said, oh yeah, one of the boys said, we have so much technology. This is back in 1970s, mid-1970s. So we may think the technology from that time is very quaint, but at the time it was big technology. He said, we have so much technology and so much advancement. And the boy asked, but there's still so much trouble in the world. Why is that? And when the devotee related that to Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, that is an excellent question. That is a very intelligent person asking that question. So questions to a qualified person, what is our benefit? What is for our benefit? And then in one sense, you could say, Prabhupada sometimes said, the best question of all is, how may I serve you? Prabhupada said about his own spiritual mess, he said, I never asked anything except, how can I serve you? Actually, Prabhupada said about hearing the lectures of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he said, actually, I was always devoted to listening, but I didn't even understand what he was saying. It was so elevated I couldn't understand. But still, how can I serve you? And because he had, how can I serve you? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta instructed him how to serve him by preaching in English, by spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world, by writing books, Krishna conscious books. So Prabhupada, the answer to his question, he took that answer so serious that from that question and answer grew this entire, we're here now in this temple before Radhashari Bihari because of that question and answer with Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta. So this is the essence of the whole question, how can I serve you? But if we're not to the point of spontaneously serving Krishna, if we have obstacles, and the obstacles are almost always internal obstacles within our mind to serving Krishna, to understanding Krishna, then we need to ask the questions like Arjuna did. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? How do I do this? So that it's very important. One other point is in this verse, in verse 2, Arjuna says, Adiyagya katam kotra dehesmin madhusudana. He addresses Krishna as Madhusudana. Madhusudana is the name of Krishna, meaning Krishna who killed the demon Madhu. And actually, this is not the only time. There's 2 or 3 times in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is addressed like that. In the 2nd chapter also, Krishna is addressed as Madhusudana. Seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana, Krishna spoke the following words. And Prabhupada explains in the purport. The word Madhusudana is significant in this verse. Lord Krishna killed the demon Madhu, and now Arjuna wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. So this is a nice, Krishna is real and Madhusudana is real, but there's a nice sort of, what's the word, metaphorical or allegorical meaning to the name Madhu also. That, oh, you killed this big demon Madhu, so I also have this demon of doubt or this demon of misunderstanding in my heart. So Krishna can eliminate that if we inquire from him. We may not be like Arjuna, that Krishna is with us on the chariot and we can directly address him. But if we read Bhagavad Gita, we're inquiring from Krishna. This is inquiring from Krishna. And if we read Prabhupada's books, we're inquiring from Krishna and from Srila Prabhupada. And there are many qualified devotees in this movement. And we could find someone who we trust, who we've seen their knowledge is good, their behavior is good, and they're compassionate and friendly, and they know me. And we can inquire from them also in the same way. Because when a devotee gives you instruction, he's not going to say something whimsical. He's going to say what Krishna said. Prabhupada would sometimes say like that. He would answer a question and he would say, I'm not saying, Krishna is saying. So in this way, we're actually directly or indirectly, however you want to take it, we're inquiring from Krishna and getting knowledge from Krishna. And Madhusudana is removing our doubts. There's a nice letter also from Srila Prabhupada to his disciple named Madhusudana. And this devotee had written to Prabhupada with some doubts. He was saying, oh, this Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, this seems parochial, or it seems not to be very broad or universal. It seems too Indian, or it seems too this. So he had these different kinds of doubts. And Prabhupada wrote to him, he said, I see from your writings that you think Vedas or Bhagavatam or Gita seem not so universal. What is the reason for your thinking like this? What do you mean by universal? Do you think that there is any other scripture in the world which is more universal than the Vedas and Bhagavat, etc.? Is there any literature in the world which is more sublime in knowledge than the Bhagavad Gita? The word Krishna means all attractive. So where you get the foreign element in Krishna? Does it mean that he is attractive for all except yourself? And if he is not attractive to you, why is it so? So you kindly answer all these questions from me. So I really like this, how Prabhupada turned it around, that this Madhusudana had these doubts and questions which he applied to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada turned it around and said, I have some questions for you. How do you answer this? So I thought that was very nice how Prabhupada did that. Then he continued in the letter. He said, you say that you will do as I say, and you also prayed to Madhusudana. Remember, the devotee's name is also Madhusudana. And you also prayed to Madhusudana to slay the demon of your doubt. But unless you act according to the direction of Madhusudana, how can Madhusudana help you? So this is the essence of questioning in spiritual life, that our doubts are real, our problems are real, and we have to face them, and we approach an authority, a living authority, a past acharya, the knowledge contained in the Vedic literature, and we approach with our doubts. But we also have to be willing to take the instructions given by those sources. Therefore, pari prashnena sevaya, questioning and service have to go together. So this is the significance. And the other further significance of Madhusudana is that this Madhu demon was a demon who appeared long, long ago at the beginning of creation. And early in the creation, Lord Brahma, the creator, the immediate creator, or fabricator of the universe, he manifests from his breathing all of the Vedic knowledge. And this demon Madhu came and he stole the Vedas away from Lord Brahma. So therefore, Lord Brahma went to Krishna, and Krishna came and slayed the demon Madhu and brought the Vedas back. So this is the other meaning of Madhusudana, that this Madhu demon stole away the Vedas. Veda means knowledge, not just the books, but transcendental knowledge. And the demon of doubt, the demon of misunderstanding covers up, hides away that actual spiritual knowledge. So therefore, Madhusudana is the person who can slay that demon of doubt, that demon of misunderstanding, and give us full knowledge. So this is why we get our knowledge primarily, to a large extent, from the Vedic revelation, from Srila Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and give us our duty. Just like without the Vedic knowledge, Lord Brahma could no longer perform his duty. So without proper understanding, we cannot perform our duty. And what's our duty? Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktiradhoksajay. That our prime number one duty is unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to Krishna. Finally, very quick, if I could find it quickly, another quick bit from Srimad Bhagavatam, which I heard in class earlier this week. This is from the second canto, and Prabhupada said, the Lord, this is in his purport to 2.3.20, The Lord imparted instructions with full senses, and Arjuna received them with full senses. And thus there was a perfect exchange of sensible and logical understanding between the master and the disciple. Spiritual understanding is nothing like an electric charge from the master to the disciple. Those who know, this is a hidden reference to a particular bogus spiritual leader in India, who shall remain nameless. Nothing like an electric charge from the master to the disciple, as foolishly claimed by some propaganda mongers. Everything is full of sense and logic, and the exchange of views between the master and disciple is possible only when the reception is submissive and real. So questions and answers is how we get knowledge. This is the Vedic tradition. This is going back to ancient Greece. The Socratic dialogues instituted this. In the at least in the Jewish tradition, the Talmud is questions and answers and arguments and back and forth. So we do this also. And when it's properly motivated and properly done, when we're qualified and when the person or entity we're approaching to question from is qualified, then we could actually advance very nicely in devotional service. Hare Krishna. Thank you everybody for your kind attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. It's late, so no time for questions.
Thank you very much, Acharya Prabhu. There is no time for questions, but later on, if you have questions, you can always approach him. I just want to make a quick announcement. After we are going to have Aarti now. Kanchan is going to lead Aarti Kirtan today. A special day for her today. So please, all of you stay at the end of Kirtan. There are some special announcements. Even the kids will be interested. So please, all of you stay for the end.
Hare
wait for a couple of minutes. Just take this mic out. Just a few announcements. Hare Krishna. First of all, a devotee family that has been here for a few years and made a big contribution to this temple. They're moving back to India. The family is moving back to India. We just want to say best of luck to them and say thank you. So, Ramsham Prabhu, Leela Mataji, Kanchan, and Mukund. All four of them have actually done a lot for the temple. You saw Ramsham Prabhu with the japa. He's been giving a few classes also and manages the audio, does a lot of things. Mataji has been making daily sweets. She's involved in a lot of other activities. But more than the parents, the children, Kanchan and Mukund, they have been a big Sunday school, big part of Kirtan, playing Mridanga. They have been wonderful addition to our Sunday school. We just want to wish everybody best of luck, and we will miss you and hope to see you all again very, very soon.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes, yes. Ramsham Prabhu is going to be here, and I'm hoping that the family will also come back. But they are making a big move, so we just want to wish them best of luck. If we can all raise our hands and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare.
Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare.
Thank you very much. Another big news, we just got this surprise news this morning. Anita Mataji, as we have known her all this time, she got first and second initiation yesterday from Veer Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna Mataji. She is also very involved at the temple. She is in charge of making garlands. She makes the schedule. She organizes the volunteers. All the garlands that you see on the deities, she organizes the volunteer list and she makes garlands. So she is, so her name now is Anuttara Radhika Devi Dasi. So one Mahamantra for her. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We have a sponsor for today. Suresh and Sudha Pinninti. They're sponsoring the feast for their daughter Ramya's birthday. So if they can come forward. Mahaprasad. So we can say Hare Krishna Mahamantra for the whole family and Ramya especially. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you very much. And finally, next Sunday, we're going to have a Pizza Prasadam fundraiser. I mean, prasadam itself is wonderful. Pizza prasadam, what could be better than that? Well, the Child Protection team is having a fundraiser to raise money for the Child Protection Office, the North American Child Protection Office. So we have some good deals going on also. You can just come on that day. You can pay in any form, cash, credit, check, whatever. We will take everything. It's going to be $3 a slice. If you want a whole pie, we can take orders just today, so we know how much to prepare. And then it's 6 slices per pizza, but you can get the pizza for $16, so you get 1 free slice. So, and again, we're trying to raise funds for the Child Protection Office, so This is just a suggestion. You're always welcome to give a bigger donation if you like. So that is next Sunday. It's Father's Day also, so please all of you come with your wallets and your handouts. Thank you very much. So prasadam is going to be served out.